Well, our purpose is to show you what's currently happening in our classrooms here in West Bloomfield as we have returned to learn K through 8 with our in-person, and we want to spend some time showing you, since you haven't been allowed in as parents to see what's happening daily with our screenings, with our safety protocols, and so forth. We want to give you an update on our planning. We want to make sure that we talk a little bit about what we were planning to do in the notice that you got today. And so we want to talk about that a little bit, and then just to make sure that you are ready to fill out a stakeholder survey that we will be submitting to you later this evening. You'll be getting a copy of the webinar and a survey we'd like you to complete as we begin to plan for our next steps in our return to learn. So really our purpose tonight is threefold. We want to give you a glimpse into our classrooms, what's currently happening right now. We want you to be able to give us feedback for our next steps via a survey that you'll be receiving later tonight as well, again, as a link to this webinar, and to be able to do that with all the information. We wanted to send that stakeholder survey, and this webinar really grew out of the idea that you would be filling it out really sort of blindly without knowing what we really were doing and being able to see it firsthand. So this is an opportunity for you to gain information before giving us feedback. So thank you. We really appreciate that as well. I'm going to take just a minute and introduce the panelists. Sometimes that's easiest. There we go. So with us this evening, we have Dr. Hill, our Superintendent of Schools. I'm Deanna Barish, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. We have Kyle Anderson, Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. Eric Whitney, Assistant Superintendent of Talent Development and Management. Eric Pace, Principal of West Bloomfield High School. Catherine Law is not here with us this evening, but instead we have Becky Heisch, who is our restorative practice coach for the district. Amy Quinn, our math and science coordinator and advanced programming coordinator, and then Gianna Taylor, our K-12, ELA, MTSS, and school improvement coordinator. So you have a full slate tonight of all of us here to give you quite a bit of information. So that's who's on the panel as well this evening. I do want to let you know that while you might see the chat feature at home in the webinar as an option, we are not monitoring the chat. So please, there's no reason to put anything in there. We're not going to open it because this is really more informational, and then you'll have your opportunity to give us feedback in the survey later this evening and in the coming days. We want to sort of address the communication that you received. You received a couple of communications from us today, actually. So earlier this afternoon, you saw a communication that says on Monday, November the 2nd, we are going to be having an asynchronous day for all students in all grades and all programs, including Lakers Online at West Bloomfield High School. And we want to talk a little bit to make sure that we clear up any misconceptions that you may have and make sure that we address with you the reason why. As you know, and as you probably saw today, there is a significant rise in number of COVID cases in our state and particularly in our region and certainly in Oakland County. And while we have no indication right now, I want to be very clear, we don't know if or when there may be an extended closure, but we want to make sure that not unlike last spring, we're prepared, our teachers are prepared, our students are prepared, and that there's no loss of learning. So that if indeed we are forced to make that decision that we needed to close for an extended period of time, that our students would be ready to go and have everything that they need in order to be successful and to be able to continue learning successfully. So again, I want to be clear, we have no crystal ball at this point in time, and there's no secret information that we know that you don't know. It is simply that we have continued to lead not only Oakland County, but really our region and our planning and being proactive. And again, we want to be able to do that in the same vein. You might ask, why is Lakers Online, that's already fully remote, and WBHS, also fully remote, having an asynchronous day on Monday? I just want to remind you that that does not mean that instruction's not happening. That just means that there's no live instruction that day, but there will be meaningful work for your students to do. You also should know that those two groups of teachers, Lakers Online and WBHS, have a wealth of knowledge about teaching online. They've been doing it since the beginning of the school year. They've done it very, very well with Canvas. They've managed to navigate Zoom. They've begun to really understand and have a clear idea of how to manage synchronous and asynchronous learning in the same day. And so we want to really rely on their expertise as we plan for everybody else K-8. So we need to make sure that our entire district is planning together so that we're really lock in step so that your students, regardless of their learning path, are having the same experience. So that's why everyone will be participating at an asynchronous day on Monday. As a reminder, on Tuesday, it is no school for staff or students. There will not be any asynchronous lessons. There is nothing. It is election day. We have several polling locations across the district. And so because of that, there will be that's just a normal day off on our calendar. So Monday will be asynchronous. Tuesday is no school for staff or students. Wednesday is an asynchronous day, typical calendar. And then Thursday, we fully anticipate that our instruction will return as normal, whether that's remotely for Lakers Online and WBHS or back in person for K-8 and OEC and the remainder of our programs. So that we want to make sure that you're clear about why we were sending that message today. And that you know what our planning and purpose is. I want to give kudos to the team that you see here on your screen tonight and that you're going to be hearing from. We continue to have a very innovative and flexible and really just always keeping what's best for students in the forefront. And so it really takes a lot of, just kind of fearless leadership to realize that we need to pivot very quickly, that we need to make sure that we have everyone ready to go and that we can be successful and that your students are not going to have any learning loss. There's not going to be a stoppage of instruction if we should have to suddenly switch to remote learning only. And we could not do that without the people that you're seeing on this panel tonight. So I want to make sure that I thank them for their time and their innovation and their willingness to always, think outside the box and do what's best for kids. So I want to make sure that was clear as well. So we've talked a little bit about our purpose. And so as you know, we're just going to do a quick kind of reminder for everybody so that when you're completing the survey, which is really the purpose for this evening, that you understand where we are right now. If we're in person, we have students that are cohorted K through 8, that we have cohort A and cohort B. They're meeting Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and half days for 2 hours and 40 minutes. That we have everyone in the district learning remotely on Wednesday so that students and parents can have the ability to certainly plan and provide asynchronous instruction and do those sorts of things. We've been able to provide additional support for our students with special needs, our ESL students, and really have some good planning in place to begin for those students who are struggling with literacy instruction and with math as well. So that's our current model. As you may remember, we pivoted maybe early August when we recognized that we wanted to be able to provide a more consistent educational experience for our students kindergarten through 8th grade by having those 4 half days. And so we really feel like what has been successful and a success, a huge celebration that we have to remind ourselves, even though the data today medically would say and health-wise would say it's not real great in our region right now, a huge success for West Bloomfield is that we started school on August the 25th. Remember? We were the only ones that were going back to school on August the 25th. And not without some consternation on the parts of all of us and a little nervousness about whether we could make this happen. We've gone from August 25th until really early this week without any cases that impacted instruction at school. That's pretty impressive. So we managed to make it to almost the 1st of November with no disruption in education. And frankly, that's quite an accomplishment, and we should be, that's really kudos to the planning and all the things that we have been able to do in the hours of time that all of you have spent. So we appreciate that as well. So that's currently the model that we're operating in. Lakers Online, I think we haven't given an update in several weeks. So we want to make sure you understand that is our remote learning only option for kindergarten through 12th graders. We have more than 1,500 students currently participating in Lakers Online. We've been able to really, certainly not without bumps, but we've been able to provide a quality learning experience with West Bloomfield teachers, the opportunity to interact, even if they're doing, as some students are at both West Bloomfield High School and in Lakers Online, some coursework through Edgenuity. There's still a West Bloomfield teacher who's providing support and resources and making sure that students are getting through those assignments as they should. So we've been able to do that as well. So Lakers Online has been quite successful. We feel lucky that we've been able to offer this to our staff or to our students, and it will continue regardless of what phase we're in and as we move forward. A question you may ask is if indeed soon I just chose as a family that we want to come back to in-person instruction, or that we feel we're not comfortable with the current model and we are interested in moving to Lakers Online, what will be the process? We are working as a team next week to develop a seamless process to make sure that can happen at the semester break. So it will not occur before the start of second semester, which is late January. You will receive information in the next week or so about the process to move either from Lakers Online to face-to-face to start a second semester or vice versa. So we want to make sure you understand what the timeline is for that. It will be the start of first semester before any of those shifts are made. So we feel very lucky that we are able to offer both remote learning and in person to our students across the district, and have had a lot of success thus far. I'm going to turn this over at this point in time to the coordinators, who are going to talk a little bit about what you're going to see coming up and some examples of what's happening in our classroom. So Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
So we thought, instead of just telling, we wanted to actually show you what's going on in the classroom. So we have some pictures and some video, and we're actually going to start with a video. It's about a 4-minute video, just so you can get a quick glimpse of what's going on in the classroom with students wearing their masks, being able to social distance, learning still moving forward. And also there's a few interviews on here. There's a parent, a student, footage of actual classrooms, West Bloomfield classrooms, all levels. And then also a little bit from our custodial staff and transportation. So first, let's take a look at the video.
The reason I felt so comfortable is because of the school district that we are in with West Bloomfield, with how the district has handled everything from the very beginning and prepared even before the beginning actually started with quarantine. I knew I wanted to be back, and I trusted the district to do all the research and make the proper safety decisions and the educational decisions for our students. And so whatever the plan would be, I knew it would be the best plan that we could come up with at the time.
One thing I know that's been working super well is that a lot of teachers have been transitioning to a flipped learning model, where instead of doing like textbook notes and lectures during actual class time, they'll assign students to do that in their free time with homework, and then when they come back to the classroom, they can do sample questions or exercises, and because they're doing it during class time, they have teachers and classmates to help them through the work, and this has been really successful in classes for me like Spanish and physics, so I know that's been working really well.
Today is give you a demonstration of how our vector fog machine operates within our classrooms. This vector fog will deliver a solution that can disinfect throughout the classroom, and in a short moment, my day custodian here at Greshko, Robert Green, will give that demonstration. The vector fog machine and its EPA approved, and the solution we will be using has been recommended by the CDC. The projectiles will come in the form of micro droplets, and they will project from 6 to 12 feet.
As they enter the bus, all of the students do have to use a hand sanitizer before taking their seats. We do have assigned seating as much as possible. and siblings are allowed to sit together in the seats. You know, we do monitor where the students are sitting and that they are keeping their masks on throughout the bus ride, which they've been very cooperative in doing that. And what we've been doing every day as buses return to the lot after their morning routes, they are all fogged with EPA-approved disinfectant.
All right, great. So we went through the video, and now we're just going to go through a few pictures, so you can kind of take a peek. So here you can see that some elementary students using their math manipulatives, but of course they're keeping them just to themselves. And also we've got some hands-on science going on the left. Students keeping their masks on, but still very active in their learning. This is a neat view if you can kind of see the plexiglass. It's actually so students can work at one table safely. Another example, we're just using our flexible furniture in a different way to make sure we have that distance. This is at one of our elementary schools where the students stay in the classroom and then the teachers are actually the ones doing the transition. So here's what it would look like in the elementary. Then we have our elective teachers. They're using everything that they need to have high quality instruction. So either their Promethean board or a second screen, having their instrument or whatever they need. This looked similar to elementary, but this is actually middle school. So this is where the teachers would be doing the transitioning. And this is what the hallway looks like during that transition time. Got some I believe this is middle school classroom. A few more. Gianna and Deanna, anything else you want to add? We have just a few more to show. These are the few pictures from Cloud Care, and they are kept with their small group and the same type of being able to social distance and have their masks on. Show the car line. And Deanna, do you want to talk about these a little?
Sure. So we just wanted to kind of give some examples. So thank you for the video. That turned out awesome. And certainly the example of what's happening in our classrooms right now. As you can see, we've been able to take and thank you, kudos to our staff, have taken very seriously those safety protocols. Students are in masks, staffs are in masks, they are 6 feet apart. You'll see that the classrooms in the cohorts are pretty small. So we're talking probably maximum between 10 and 12 students in each cohort, so we can safely socially distance. You know, as you know, we've not done recess and we haven't done lunch. And so some of those very typical things or specials or electives that where there's or passing periods at the middle school where there's a lot of opportunity for mixing. So our staff and have really done an excellent job making sure that students are safe and that learning is still continuing. I think we've all forgotten, or at least many of us have, what school looks like when we're not cohorted and when we are not socially distanced and when students are not in masks. And so we thought it would be important just to think about as we begin to think about the next steps in our return to learn plan, that if we begin to consider bringing the cohorts back together, that while we would certainly wear masks and the hand washing protocols would still be in place, that socially distancing would be very, very difficult. And so think about how awesome this is to see kids in these photos where they're standing close together and they're learning and everybody's huddled up like students like to do, regardless whether they're elementary students or middle school or high school students. But that is really where we will have to be, be very obviously clear with everyone that is very difficult to do in large cohort sizes. And by that, we really mean anything over really what we're doing right now, just based on classroom size and the ability to keep students apart. So we wanted to show you, just as a reminder, what it looks like in a typical school day. And as you can see, the picture on the right is from West Bloomfield High School, and that's probably not even just a typical passing period. That's probably just a part of the students coming in and moving about during the very front of the building, which is probably the least populated part of the building during passing period because most of the classrooms are in the back. And if you think about trying to manage and socially distance with 1,800 students. It really causes a struggle and obviously an opportunity for lots of exposure for both staff and for students. So again, we just wanted to show you what those pre-COVID photos look like and what was happening at that time. I'm going to turn over at this point in time to Mr. Whitney, who wants to talk a little bit about our safety protocols.
Thank you, Mrs. Barish. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope you're having a good night. I do want to touch on a couple of things that I hope are good reminders for all of us and continue to promote us working together to keep the number of cases in our schools as low as possible. You know, we've been able to see some very low numbers, and I really do believe that is because of the vigilance that we have had with these safety protocols that our teachers are taking very seriously in the classroom. The idea of distancing, of kids wearing their masks, of staff wearing their masks at all times. And those cohorts have allowed us to be very successful. So even when we do have those cases that you're starting to see a couple of last week and this week, we are very pleased that they are not resulting in large scale closures of our schools, quarantining of whole classrooms or whole schools, and so on. And we really do believe that's because of those important protocols that we have in place. So I come to you this evening with a reminder for all of us, for our staff, for our parents, for our students, to remain vigilant and be very disciplined with executing these protocols. I think it's really going to be what will help us continue to keep the numbers low in our schools. Our exposures that we are getting and that we are learning of, because in my office, it's like COVID Central, and we keep all of that information and we consult with the schools. Esther Davidson is a great, I have to give her kudos because she's really stepped up and is really helping everyone and serves as our liaison to the health department. What we're learning is that the exposures that we're experiencing are not really happening at school, but they are coming from elsewhere, from out in the community, from a family member who may be positive and so on. And it is because of the vigilance and the protocols that we have in place that we are really seeing that. I would urge all of you parents that are on this call just to remember that it is very important that you keep your children home if they are sick. And if you're not sure if you should send them to school, if you're debating and they're not feeling the best, I want to share with you, if you have not seen this yet, we have put this out in some of our information, but as a reminder, the health department, and I believe they've partnered with Beaumont Hospitals, has opened the Safe for School hotline. That hotline opens at 5 a.m. each morning, Monday through Friday. The phone number is there on your screen, 248-551-4242. Parents can call that hotline and talk to a nurse who will help them decide if your child should go to school. So if you're not sure if they're safe for school, please call that hotline. I would encourage you to do that and talk to the nurse. When in doubt, I say keep them out right now because it is better safe than sorry, and that is really what is helping keep our numbers low. On the next screen, I just want to point out one other thing that you're going to be seeing very soon is that the Oakland County Health Department has updated their at-home screening checklist for staff and students. And so we're going to make sure that all of our families get this information coming home to you soon, and that you have this checklist that will walk you through step by step. What are the questions that you should be asking yourself? What should you be looking for in your students? And what would be a reason why you might keep them home? And so some of that guidance has changed over the last several weeks, over the last months. And so we want to make sure that you have that updated so that you're making very good decisions about sending your children to school. A rule of thumb in terms of symptoms, fevers, for example, is that students should be symptom-free, fever-free, for example, for 24 hours without medication before you send them back to school. So if you keep that in mind, I think we will all be doing our part to keep our kids, to keep our staff, to keep each other safe and healthy. And I know that it's really on everybody's minds. It's getting to the cold and flu season, so we want to make sure that we continue to emphasize that message. We're here to help, so if you have any questions, think about that hotline. The health department also has a nurse on call hotline, and you are welcome to reach out to any of our schools, and we will work with you together. So thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about that. I really appreciate it, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Whitney. So I'd like to go over a few of the kind of operational aspects of what we're doing to keep all of our students and staff safe this year. And you saw in the video, that was Evan Moore. He's our general manager of our custodial department. And he was disinfecting a room with his custodian. And really what we wanted to do was disinfect each space before a new cohort or a new group of students arrive in that space. And we're using that misting device. We're very pleased at how effective it's been. I think our numbers kind of bear that out. And we're using an EPA approved disinfectant. So kudos to our custodial staff for their diligence in following those protocols. It's been wonderful so far. You also saw some of the physical barriers that we have in place. We have hand sanitizer throughout the buildings and in every classroom. And I know our teachers are emphasizing hand washing, and that's helping also. Of note too, we really did tweak our heating and ventilation systems. And really we doubled the amount of fresh airflow into our classrooms. We're also changing our filters much more often. And we are starting and stopping the systems 2 hours before the beginning of school and 2 hours after to allow more air exchange and to, again, help keep everyone safe. And on the next slide, we have transportation. And as families probably recall, we did an opt-in system for families this year. And that really kind of lended itself to the idea that we're trying to physical distance on a school bus, which isn't too easy if you think about the size of a school bus. But we're very proud of the fact that we have an average of about 22, 23 students on our bus routes so far this year. So that's worked out well. As you saw in the video from Lynn Robertson, face masks are required, and we're asking students to use that hand sanitizer before boarding the bus. We were proud of the fact that we were able to include cloud care transportation as a part of our service this year. That was very helpful. So kudos to our bus drivers and Lynn Robertson for a job well done so far. And finally, a few notes on food service. Go once, there we go. We have a system in place. As you're aware, we really don't have the traditional lunch service in our buildings, but it's very important that we provide meals to our families. So we have 2 locations that have a curbside meal distribution systems. Those are on Wednesdays for our families. And in a number of other buildings at Scotch, Chico, and the middle school, we have the grab and go meal distribution system that we're kind of using during the parent pickup and drop off times between the 2 cohorts. So far that has worked very well. And I believe now I'm turning it over to Eric Pace, our high school principal.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Good evening, everybody. As he said, Eric Pace, high school principal here. And I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the differences and nuances when it comes to running a large high school and what it would look like in a return to learn plan. And then talk to you a little bit about the process that we've gone through in the past month or two on trying to reimagine what school might look like when we return. And that would be kind of a multi-step approach. What would it look like in an immediate return? And then what could it look like learning what we've learned about remote learning and flexible spaces in the past few months, and also what our community and our students and our staff are telling us that they need. So what you'll see here, I'm not going to read it all to you, but we created a task force where we had some recommendations from our Classroom to Cloud team from the summer for a diverse parent panel, along with students and staff that would help guide our work. This took into consideration people of all viewpoints, all grade levels, and really tried to dive into what our community needs. So what we want to do is maintain our status as leaders in educational innovation and really model our instructional programming for what you see with some of the top employers, colleges, and universities around the nation. So this team, we took and surveyed our students, our staff, and our parent community and obtained about 600 responses from parents and students each, and nearly all of our staff as well, for a total of about 1,300 responses. We compiled that data, and then what we did is went through a data sorting protocol where we just really tried not to answer things, but more look for trends, what people's fears were, what their anxieties were, and what their needs and wants were in terms of education. What would they change, or what is it that they really think they need to get out of school? And then we took those, if you want to go to the next slide for me, we took that information, we categorized it, and then we started to determine some high priority items based on that data. What is it that the community really wants to see? And what is it that our staff and students really need from us in terms of education? And we narrowed that down to a few categories. So we were looking at things like flexible time and space. How do we provide more intervention and supports for our students that need it? What do we do about lunches, passing times, things like that, that are a little bit more unstructured times? And then, how do we, again, meet those needs of diverse learners on an individual basis? So what we did is we sorted out and brainstormed a lot of ideas and came up with things irregardless of cost and feasibility, but really kind of pie in the sky brainstorming session, and then narrowed it down to things that were not just feasible, but also what we felt to be high impact in the classroom and for our learning community. And so what we're doing now is starting to propose some modified ideas for things that we can do to help us return to school as safely as possible when we do, but also look at some long-term phasing in of some changes to the instructional model, right? Education looks the same now, really, before it was a shutdown and remote, as it did when I was in school and when many of you were in school. But we have a lot more tools and a lot more knowledge at our disposal, and it's our opportunity to really utilize those to enhance our product. So what we're looking for now is really to make these recommendations here in the next week or so to our administrative team and our teaching team, and also to our Board of Education, and then start to kind of fine tune what those are going to be for implementation. When that happens, whenever we return to school, we're going to look at prototyping some ideas with what we'd call some early adopters, some staff and some classes that we think can really give us some useful data on what it looks like. We don't want to make wholesale changes just because, but we really want to take data to drive our decisions and enhance the educational experience for everyone. That being said, you saw those pictures earlier of what the high school looks like, just a couple brief snapshots. We have over 100 classrooms and 1,800 students, plus about 120 staff members in one building at one time. And on top of that, not just the large number of people, but we have a lot more unstructured time with mixing of students. And we have a really difficult time looking at a cohort model like what you've seen in some of the other schools. If we don't limit what students' choices are in the classroom, there's no way we can keep groups of students together and rotate the teachers to them, because we want to make sure we're giving them all the educational opportunities that they need. So we're really trying to come up with some creative ideas that maybe flex our time in the building, flex which students could be in the building, and also look at those unstructured times and find different ways to deliver them. So this wasn't a team that was looking at a timeline for return, but more a structure for return, and we'll let the data tell us when it's safe to come back.
We want to talk a little bit about those key considerations that we as a full team from across the district, administrators, our classroom to cloud planning teams, that it can continue to meet. Those that we established this summer have continued to meet this fall. And some things that we've asked all of our teams across the district to consider is, as we contemplate bringing students back in larger groups, that increased class size is going to equal less social distancing. That's just the nature of having more students. Our rooms are not suddenly going to grow. So increased class size is going to equal less social distancing. And what does that mean? And what implications does that have on student and staff safety? Lunch, recess, and passing time obviously means less mask use. That when they're together, even if they're 6 feet apart, obviously they're going to have their masks off while they're eating. That recess time would be obviously an opportunity for a mask break, and would also lead to more opportunities for exposure. And passing time, which we've averted at our middle school, would certainly come into play as well, because you'd have larger groups of students which means that you'd have to have more students out in the hall and be far more difficult to cohort students and have teachers move place to place. So we have to consider that as well. That a longer school day, if we return to a more typical school day time structure, would mean more transition. It's simply we can't have students. It's at their length, probably really about as far as what they can do at one point in time to be attentive and in their seats for 2 hours and 40 minutes. To make it much longer than that would just not be possible or very fair to the students or to the staff. And so that means there would be more transitions. And again, more opportunities for mixing and for exposure. We've been able to really focus our instruction. And I think it's been something that I'm not sure that any of us had anticipated. But when you have 2 hours and 40 minutes, and during that time, you are very, very on point as a teacher. So there's not the transitions. You're determining what is the most important pieces of information, content, standards, understandings that students need to have each and every day. And so it has been very focused, and we've seen teachers be able to really go deeper with content, but actually move faster because they have much smaller groups of students in front of them. And so they're able to really better gauge where their students are as learners and understanding of the lessons that they are teaching. And so we will certainly have an impact on that focused instruction because there could be a longer day, and because there could be more transition, there could also be an impact on that focused instruction. Quite awesome. Obviously, a consideration is that there is the potential for a disruption of learning because we might be forced to quarantine a classroom. We might be forced to quarantine or close a school for an extended period of time, and that we also have students that are in quarantine now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in just a moment. And it kind of goes along the same lines that we may not have and are quickly approaching not having enough guest teachers to cover for staff while those teachers are in quarantine. Obviously, we have to be very careful about the data that we share. So certainly you see what we send home. That is full transparency. Those are positive cases that are in our buildings right now. There are other cases that are happening, and Mr. Whitney touched on this, that have nothing to do with what's happening in our classrooms or in our schools or on our buses or anywhere else. It is because of community spread. People are out and about. I think we know that people have COVID fatigue, and we understand that. We all do. I'm not at home right now, obviously, either. But I think we have to remember that the choices we make do have implications. And so we have many staff right now who thankfully are able to be in teaching roles that we're able to quarantine them without having an impact on student learning, but that will not always be the case. And as you can imagine, guest teachers, which are hard to come by on a good day, on a non-COVID school year, are almost impossible to find now. And so it may indeed come to a point where if we had a number of staff who needed to quarantine, that we would not be able to open school because we wouldn't have enough guest teachers to cover those classrooms. So, and I think one of the significantly positive things that we've had this fall have been the fact that we have not had disruption of learning. Your students, whether remotely or in person, have been able to attend school each and every day, to receive new instruction each and every day. We've not had to close. I'm not telling you that might not at some point happen, but I think that we have to remember that by cohorting our students, keeping them in small groups, being very vigilant about our hand washing and our mask use, that we've been able to not have a disruption of learning. And I worry that may indeed happen as we continue to increase the number of students and the amount of time and the transitions in the school. So these are all factors that we're considering, and that we certainly are going to ask for your feedback as you complete the survey. So you've probably seen this graphic. We shared this. I want to thank Gianna Taylor, who's our resident graphic maker. So we wanted to stay with our theme. This has been obviously a pattern that's familiar to all of you and certainly explains where we are in our journey. We have surveyed our staff. So we have staff data about their feelings about our return to learn plan, what's gone well this fall, certainly things that we need to consider as the school year progresses. We have also certainly done a parent focus group last week. So thanks to those parents who participated in our focus group last week. We got a lot of good information from them. We're involving you this evening to have the opportunity to learn some more and to see what's happening in our classrooms. We are opening a parent survey this evening, right after this webinar. You'll be receiving a link to not only the webinar, but to the survey as well. It will be open starting this evening. through next Tuesday at 5 p.m. So right after you finish voting, and after you while you're standing in line to vote next week, you can complete the survey if you have not yet done so. It is going to close at 5 p.m. next Tuesday. Our district classroom to cloud teams will reconvene on Wednesday afternoon to really look at that data. We're going to then have a opportunity to synthesize the data to make sure that if there are some recommendations and considerations, we will share those with staff based on our stakeholder feedback, certainly based on the data that we're receiving around the number of COVID cases across the state and within our region, and certainly within Oakland County. And then we will be taking from the staff, we do have a webinar scheduled for our parents, again, next Thursday evening. We want to share all the data that we have with all of you, and anything that may result in some recommendations that would then go to the board on Monday, November the 9th, as part of our reaffirmation of our Return to Learn plan. Under the legislation, we're required to reaffirm our Return to Learn plan each and every month. And so this is part of that process. And so we will certainly be sharing that information with you as our stakeholders, with our staff, and then with the Board of Education on November the 9th. So we want you to be very aware of what that timeline is. Right now, we have scheduled on the books that on November 20th, families would need to make the decision by November 20th about returning to face-to-face second semester or to move to Lakers Online. And again, there'll be more information coming. So that's certainly a good part of we wanted you to see where we are in our planning process, and what we have really prided ourselves on and continue to pride ourselves on in West Bloomfield is that we take your feedback, we listen, we involve you and as stakeholders, as parents, as community members, as staff, to help us guide our decisions. And when we go to the Board of Education, we're confident that we have listened and that we've made sure that we've heard multiple voices, and that we are making the decision that is best for students and their learning and safety, and for staff. And so we wanted to make sure that we continue that process throughout our Return to Learn. Turn it over to Becky. Thank you, Becky.
Yep, thank you for coming. So as Deanna mentioned, we have our Return to Learn Fall Family Survey. So we'd like your feedback on the first 10 weeks. So there'll be some questions on how your student has been progressing on their learning path, whatever that might be, if that's in-person learning or our West Bloomfield High School remote learning or our Lakers Online. We do ask that if you have multiple students, if you would fill one out for each student so we can see, your kids might have different learning experiences. And as Deanna mentioned, it has been very important to us since March that we have feedback from all of our stakeholders. So as Deanna mentioned on the timeline, we have recently been doing our surveys for staff, and you'll have your family one this evening and students. And this will really help frame our conversation. Again, as Mr. Pace already alluded to, we will let the data help us as well in our decision making, but we really do value the feedback from our families and our students and our staff. So once we have this video downloaded onto our survey, we'll send that out tonight. So thank you for your feedback.
That concludes the presentation tonight. I just wanted to give a couple of final thoughts before we let you go and have the rest of your evening free to complete the survey and go back and watch the webinar again if you're really desperate for things to watch at this point in time. We understand that there's a lot of uncertainty again, and that while this has certainly been by far the most trying time ever for me educationally, I would assume most of the people on the panel, and certainly you as families, feel the same way, that we always have to consider what is best for our students and for our staff. What has been our guiding principles and what will continue to be our guiding principles are their students and staff safety and health. The data right now across our region and across the state and in Oakland County does not suggest that it's safe for us to do anything than what we are currently doing. And in fact, as you can see by our plan for Monday, that we have to be prepared to actually go back, if need be, into a closed situation and a fully remote learning only opportunity for our students. None of us want to be here. We all want to be back in person. We all want to go back and see those classrooms full of students on top of each other and learning and interacting and just having a typical educational experience. In the same vein, we also want to make sure that we can do that safely and that we don't put anybody in jeopardy. We understand as a school district that this has really become a very political conversation rather than a public health conversation. And we're not going to engage in the political part of this conversation, because what we have to do as a district, again, is to make those decisions based on what's best for our students and for our staff. We know that there are other school districts across Oakland County who have brought high school students back, who have brought K-5 back fully. We know that they are doing maybe a different path than what we are. And I think I said this in a webinar earlier this summer, we're not them. We all have the opportunity to make decisions that are best for our school district. We've been given that latitude certainly by the state legislature, certainly by the Supreme Court of Michigan, by the lack of executive orders that we now have at this point in time. And so we're going to use the data to make our decisions. And we will continue to involve our stakeholders. We know that some of you are frustrated. We know that some of you don't understand necessarily or agree with the decisions that we're making. And we empathize certainly, and we will continue to seek your feedback and to keep you abreast of our decision-making kind of protocols and processes. But we want to make sure that we are doing what's best for our students and staff. I also would say that sometimes what people believe is happening in other districts is not exactly what's happening in other districts. And so while there has been a lot of conversation about neighboring communities and what their plans are or are not, I would encourage you to dig a little deeper sometimes and to get that full picture if you really are worried about what's happening. I will tell you that from my own perspective, I always do this as a parent. I have 2 high school students. They've missed multiple days because of COVID exposures in their classrooms. It has been very disruptive. They were also struggled to have a remote learning plan, so they missed 2 days where they had no instruction at all because there was not a remote learning plan in place. We don't have that. We have all those bases covered. We are prepared no matter what situation we're in. And so I want to give kudos to our staff and kudos to our administrators and certainly to our Board of Education, who has been supportive of us from the very beginning. We have been the leaders, we'll continue to be the leaders. We may not look or do like anyone else, and we're comfortable with that because we're West Bloomfield School District, and we're going to make sure that we are doing what's best for our community. So please take time to fill the survey. I can guarantee you that we will read all of your responses, that we will take time. I can assure you that will happen. I will tell you that next Thursday evening, we'll have a webinar again. You will be able to have an update on where we are in our planning process. You'll see the data that we've collected. We'll be able to share some additional, certainly our exposure data, number of students that are impacted at this point in time, share some instructional things that we're working on right now to help support those students who are in quarantine so that they don't have learning loss, and really just continue to be part of our family and our team as we move through these uncertain times together. So thank you. We look forward to seeing your responses on the survey. Have a great rest of your evening.